double-stranded. How can we understand that it is double-isnad? You can see, although it originates from a multiple narration, there is only two strands in this chain. Here is the one strand, comes over this narrator, and here is the second isnad, comes over this narrator. This one does not go till the end, this chain, and this one, all of them comes over this narrator. So in this isnad has double strand. In the table presented here, the results are calculated progressively in stages with regard to the probable status of narrators, ranging from the weakest reliability coefficient to the strongest. When the table is examined, the probability that a narration belongs to the source to which it is attributed sharply increases, starting from a point in line with the reliability coefficient of narrators. This type of isnad has a structure which is quite far from a feeble structure, thanks to its double-stranded structure. When the graphic presented here is examined, it can clearly be seen that the curve indicating the probability that the narration belongs to the source which it is attributed extends over the straight line indicating the reliability coefficient of narrators in the shape of S. This is a general characteristic feature of isnads that have more than one strand. It is not possible to encounter a situation like this in chains of transmission with a single strand. For the system on this type of isnads depends on the reliability coefficient of a single narrator. Consequently, this factor prevents the curve indicating the probability that the narration belongs to the source which it is attributed from following a path above the straight line of the reliability coefficient of narrators and isnads which has one strand. It is also seen that the top hook of the S curve, extending above the straight line of the reliability coefficient, is larger than its bottom hook. And this is an indicator that proves how sound the structure of the relevant isnad is, and accordingly how high the probability that the relevant isnad belongs to the source to which it is attributed. Now, multi-stranded combined isnad. It means a combined isnad based on a multiple channel of chain of transmission. Now, as an example, it's a multi-stranded combined isnad. You can see this is a channel, and this is a channel, second, third channel, fourth channel, fifth and sixth and seventh channel. Multi-strand, 7 strand in this combined isnad, and you can find single narration, double narration, multi-narration in this type of in this isnad. In the table presented here, the results are calculated progressively in stages with regard to the probable status of narrators, ranging from the weakest reliability coefficient to the strongest. The most important point to be highlighted in this type of an isnad is the high level of the reliability coefficients of narrators which exceed a certain level. If this high level of reliability is ensured, then the result will depend solely on the structure of the relevant isnad. As a matter of fact, the isnad above shows quite positive results for reliability coefficients over 40%, thanks to its multi-stranded structure. However, the system immediately reverses and turns down for lower reliability coefficients. As seen in the graphic presented below, this situation corresponds to the bottom hook of the S-shaped curve, the probability that the narration belongs to the source to which it is attributed. In this type of isnad, the bottom hook of the S-curve is quite small. The system turns into negative only for reliability coefficients less than 25%. The reason for this fact is the multi-stranded structure of the isnad. Judging from this point, it can be said that multi-strand isnads yields results which strengthen the final results, maybe not as much as multiple, but very close to multiple isnads. As a matter of fact, the graphic of this multi-strand isnads is very similar to the graphic structure of multiple isnad above. It is seen that some types of isnads generate relatively linear responses at certain intervals with regard to increase in the reliability coefficient of narrators, whereas some others generate a parabolic response on the positive or negative direction. As a matter of fact, a slight decline in the reliability coefficient of narrators generates a strong impact parabolic response on some types of isnads with regard to their percentage of probability that the relevant isnads belong to the source to which they are attributed to, whereas generates almost a linear impact on some types of isnad with regard to their percentage of probability with regard to their status of belonging. When it is looked from this point of view, it can be said that the single isnad has the most fragile structure among the types of isnads. On the other hand, it is understood that the double and multiple isnads have the healthiest and most sound structure. The isnad of a hadith is required to prove the reality and reliability of the narration. This is the main purpose of the concept of isnad. However, for this purpose, two concepts come to the forefront. The first one of these two concepts is the type of isnad, and the other one is the reliability coefficients of the narrators, in other words, of the persons who transmit the relevant narrations. A discussion to find out which of these two arguments is more important may appear to be a shallow approach to handle the issue, for the issue is more complex than it seems at the first sight. As a matter of fact, from time to time, the structure of the isnad plays a decisive role in determining the probability of the relevant narration to belong to the source to which it is attributed, whereas from time to time the reliability coefficient of narrators plays a more decisive role. Let's classify the isnads which we examined thoroughly in this paper into two categories only for the purposes of evaluation: single-stranded isnads and multi-stranded isnads. These two types of isnads differ from each other with very distinctive lines in terms of their efficiency. In our study, in the graphics, it is clearly seen that all of the single-stranded isnads, the curve illustrating the probability that the narration belongs to the source which it is attributed, always followed a path which is below the straight line of the reliability coefficient of narrators. As seen from the graphic, in single-strand isnads, the straight line indicating the probability coefficient of narrators forms a D shape together with the curve indicating the probability that the narration belongs to the source to which it is attributed. When the single-strand isnad is simple, in cases where a single narration is followed by a single narration, the center of the D shape gets wider, whereas in single-strand isnads supported with many narrators, the center of the D shape gets narrower, starting from the upper part. The fragility of the system increases in line with the width of the center part of the D shape. In other words, it means that it yields a negative result for a wide range of reliability coefficient of narrators. Such an unfavorable spiral chain of transmission, Isnad, can only be overcome by very high levels of reliability coefficients of narrators. Consequently, in single-stranded Isnads, for a probability of higher than 50% that the relevant narration belongs to the source to which it is attributed, always requires a high probability coefficient of narrators. For example, this type of an Isnad would remain inadequate in order to reach a positive result in terms of narrators who have a reliability coefficient of between 50% and 65%, which we think that there are so many in the history of Hadith literature. On the other hand, the reliability coefficient of the narrator who constitutes the reason that the relevant narration to originate from only one source and to be narrated by only one narrator has prior importance compared to the other factors, for the system completely depends on this narrator. In our paper, in order to make it more easily understandable, we collected reliability coefficients of narrators in one single variable. This is because the purpose of our study is only to the determination and analysis of Isnad categories. In a more comprehensive study, it can be focused on the reliability coefficients of narrators by assigning different variables to them each time, and then the results obtained can be examined thoroughly. In conclusion, we can say that in single-stranded combined Isnads, the degree of the reliability probability that the narration belongs to the source to which it is attributed, to a large extent, depends upon the reliability coefficients of narrators. In other words, the probability that the narration belongs to the source to which it is attributed may prevail over the low values based on the higher values of reliability coefficients of narrators. For this type of Isnads adversely affects the probability that the relevant narration belongs to the source which it is attributed. And now, multi-stranded combined Isnads. The situation is quite different in Isnads which have more than one strand. Single-stranded Isnads always generate a prototype response for all value ranges of the reliability coefficient of narrators, which pulls the results down. In other words, which weakens the results, whereas Isnads with more than one strand generate two different responses with regard to different value ranges of the reliability coefficient, namely from time to time strengthening and from time to time, on the contrary, weakening. The Isnad system consisting of more than one strand generally has a weakening effect for subgroup of reliability values of narrators, whereas has a reinforcing, strengthening effect in terms of superior group of reliability values of narrators. The frontier point of the value range of both transactions is determined by the structure of the relevant multi-strand Isnad. For example, a double-stranded combined Isnad that was originated from a double narration has a weakening effect on the result between the ranges of 0 and 48% of reliability coefficient of narrators, whereas it has a strengthening effect on the result between the ranges of 49 and 100% of reliability coefficient of narrators. On the other hand, double-stranded combined Isnad that was originated from a multiple narration has a weakening effect on the result only between the ranges of 0 and 33% of reliability coefficient of narrators, whereas it has a strengthening effect on the result between the ranges of 34 and 100% of reliability coefficient of narrators. In the graphics, this situation appears in the size of the upper or bottom hook of the curve in the shape of S. The hook is either large or small with regard to its weakening or strengthening effect. This double standard response of the multi-strand Isnad system leads the curve indicating the probability that the narration belongs to the source which it is attributed to form an S shape over the straight line of the reliability coefficient of narrators. Consequently, it seems that such a type of Isnad system is appropriate and suitable for narrators who have a reliability coefficient of between 50% and 65%, which we think that there are so many in the history of Hadith literature, in terms of reaching a positive result with regard to the probability that the relevant narration belongs to the source to which it is attributed. As a result, it can be said that in Isnads that have more than one strand, the Isnad generally has a positive reinforcing effect in the probability that the relevant narration belongs to the source to which it is attributed, to show a positive trend. In this type of Isnads, the reliability coefficient of narrators drops to the second place, for the system continuously supports within a certain range and to the maximum extent possible the probability that the relevant narration belongs to the source which it is attributed. As we mentioned above, the range and magnitude of this support is determined by the structure of the relevant multi-strand combined Isnad. أقول قولي هذا وأستغفر الله العظيم لي ولكم ولسائر المؤمنين والسلام عليكم ورحمة الله تعالى وبركاته.